What if I told you that for the last 5,000 years, there's been a body of knowledge so powerful, so transformative, that every major civilization has tried to either suppress it or control access to it? What if I told you that this knowledge explains why some people seem to effortlessly attract success, why certain individuals can predict future events with uncanny accuracy, and why a small group of people throughout history have been able to influence reality in ways but deep down you've always felt it, haven't you? That sense that reality is far more mysterious than what you learned in school. Those moments when you think of someone and they call you 5 minutes later. Those times when you walk into a room and instantly know something significant is about to happen. Those dreams that later come true in disturbing detail. You felt it, but you've been told to dismiss it as coincidence, imagination, or wishful thinking. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to reveal is everything you need to know about esotericism. No fluff, no mystical nonsense, no New Age platitudes. Just the raw, practical truth about how reality actually works, and how you can use this knowledge to transform every aspect of your life. This isn't just philosophy. This isn't just theory. This is the operating manual for human consciousness that they don't teach in any university. Welcome to the most comprehensive breakdown of esotericism you'll ever encounter. I'm going to strip away centuries of deliberate obscurity and give you the straight facts about the hidden science that's been used by everyone from ancient Egyptian pharaohs to modern tech billionaires. By the time we're done, you'll understand not just what esotericism is, but exactly how to apply its principles in your daily life. Let's start with the brutal truth. Esotericism isn't about crystals, tarot cards, or talking to angels. Those might be tools that some people use, but they're not the essence of esoteric knowledge. Real esotericism is the study of hidden natural laws, invisible principles that govern how consciousness interacts with reality. It's as scientific as physics, as practical as engineering, and as results-oriented as any business strategy. The word esoteric comes from the ancient Greek esoterikos, meaning inner or within. It refers to knowledge that's hidden, not because it's secret, but because it can only be understood through direct experience. You can't learn to ride a bicycle by reading about it. You can't understand music by studying mathematical ratios. And you can't grasp esoteric principles through intellectual analysis alone. You have to develop the inner faculties that allow you to perceive what's actually happening beneath the surface of ordinary experience. Here's what they don't tell you. Every major breakthrough in human history came from someone who understood esoteric principles, whether they called it that or not. The Renaissance masters weren't just talented artists. They were students of Hermetic philosophy who understood how to channel creative forces through disciplined practice. The Industrial Revolution wasn't just about machines. It was driven by people who understood how to focus mental energy to solve seemingly impossible problems. Modern tech innovators like Steve Jobs weren't just clever marketers. They were intuitive geniuses who understood how to tap into collective, unconscious needs and desires. Jobs studied Zen Buddhism, experimented with psychedelics, and practiced meditation techniques that are fundamentally esoteric in nature. He understood that true innovation doesn't come from logical thinking alone, but from accessing deeper levels of consciousness where genuinely new possibilities can be perceived. But here's where it gets really interesting. The most successful people in every field, whether they realize it or not, are using esoteric principles. They might call it intuition, gut instinct, flow state, or being in the zone, but what they're actually doing is accessing information and abilities that exist beyond the level of ordinary thinking. Think about the most successful person you know personally. I guarantee you they have certain characteristics that set them apart from everyone else. They seem to know things before other people figure them out. They make decisions that seem risky to others, but somehow always work out. They have an almost magnetic presence that draws opportunities to them. They recover from setbacks faster than normal people. These aren't personality traits. These are the natural results of operating from higher levels of consciousness. Now let me give you the complete breakdown of what esotericism actually encompasses, because most people have no idea how vast and sophisticated this field of knowledge really is. First, there's the foundation level. Understanding that reality has multiple dimensions or levels of existence. What you perceive with your 5 physical senses is just the outermost layer. Beneath this surface layer are what esotericists call the astral, mental, and causal planes of existence. These aren't mystical fantasies. They're different frequencies of energy and information that can be accessed through specific practices and states of consciousness. The astral plane is where emotions, desires, and dreams operate. It's why you can feel someone staring at you from across a room, why you pick up on the vibe of different places, and why your emotional state can influence other people without you saying a word. The mental plane is where ideas, concepts, and abstract thinking occur. It's why great discoveries often happen to multiple people simultaneously, why you can sense what someone is thinking, and why focused mental effort can influence physical events. The causal plane is where the fundamental patterns and purposes behind events originate. It's why some people seem to live charmed lives, where everything works out perfectly. Why certain individuals can predict future trends with remarkable accuracy, and why understanding your true purpose gives you access to resources and opportunities that wouldn't otherwise be available. But here's what will blow your mind. You already access all of these planes naturally. You just don't do it consciously. Every time you have a hunch that turns out to be correct, you're accessing the mental plane. Every time you feel an instant connection with someone you just met, you're operating on the astral plane. Every time you make a decision that seems to open up a whole new path in your life, you're responding to information from the causal plane. The difference between ordinary people and those who seem to have extraordinary abilities is simply this conscious versus unconscious access to these deeper levels of reality. Esoteric training is about making conscious what's normally unconscious, developing reliable access to information and abilities that most people only experience randomly. Let me break down the core principles that govern how all of this works, because once you understand these principles, you can begin applying them systematically instead of hoping for lucky accidents. The first principle is mentalism. The idea that everything that exists started as a mental pattern or idea. Before anything manifests in physical reality, it first exists as a thought form on the mental plane. This isn't just philosophical speculation. Quantum physics has proven that consciousness affects matter at the subatomic level. The observer effect shows that the act of observation literally changes what's being observed. What this means practically is that your thoughts are not just internal experiences. They're creative forces that influence the probability patterns around you. When you consistently think about something with emotional intensity and clear visualization, you're creating what esotericists call a thought form, a semi-independent energy structure that begins attracting corresponding experiences into your physical reality. But here's the crucial part that most people miss. It's not just positive thinking that creates results. It's the quality and coherence of your mental energy. If you're thinking positive thoughts while feeling doubtful, anxious, or conflicted, you're creating contradictory thought forms that cancel each other out. This is why affirmations don't work for most people. They're trying to override deep-seated beliefs and emotional patterns with surface-level positive statements. Real mental creation requires what esotericists call alignment. Getting your conscious thoughts, subconscious beliefs, emotional patterns, and physical actions all pointing in the same direction. When you achieve this kind of internal coherence, even temporarily, things start happening that seem miraculous to people who don't understand the principles involved. The second principle is vibration. Everything in the universe is energy vibrating at different frequency. This isn't metaphysical speculation anymore. Modern science has proven that matter is simply energy vibrating at specific rates. What esotericists understood thousands of years ago, physicists are just beginning to rediscover. That consciousness itself has a vibrational frequency, and by changing your vibrational state, you literally tune into different possibilities and experiences. Your emotional state is your most reliable indicator of your current vibrational frequency. Fear, anger, resentment, and despair are low-frequency vibrations that attract chaotic, limiting experiences. Joy, gratitude, love, and enthusiasm are high-frequency vibrations that attract harmonious, expansive experiences. This isn't about feeling good all the time. It's about understanding that your emotional state is actually a technology for accessing different levels of reality. When you're in a low vibrational state, you can only perceive and attract experiences that match that frequency. You'll notice problems everywhere. People will seem difficult, opportunities will be scarce, and everything will feel like a struggle. When you're in a high vibrational state, you'll naturally notice solutions. People will be helpful. Opportunities will appear effortlessly, and life will flow with surprising ease. The third principle is correspondence, the Hermetic axiom as above. So below means that patterns repeat at every level of existence. The same mathematical ratios that govern the growth of galaxies also appear in the structure of atoms, the spiral of seashells, and the arrangement of flower petals. The same psychological patterns that create success in business also create success in relationships, health, and creative endeavors. This principle is incredibly practical because it means you can study one area of life to understand universal patterns that apply everywhere else. If you understand how energy flows in one system, you can apply that knowledge to any other system. If you master the principles that create abundance in one area, you can use those same principles to create abundance in any area. The fourth principle is polarity. Everything has an opposite, but opposites are really different degrees of the same thing. Hot and cold are both temperature. Love and fear are both emotional states. Success and failure are both possible outcomes. Understanding this principle gives you the power to transmute any experience by changing your relationship to it. Instead of being at the mercy of circumstances, you can learn to find the opportunity hidden in every obstacle, the strength that develops through every challenge, the wisdom that emerges from every mistake. This isn't positive thinking. This is understanding that every experience contains both positive and negative potential. And you have the power to emphasize whichever aspect serves your growth. The fifth principle is rhythm. Everything flows in cycles and patterns. There are times for action and times for rest, times for expansion and times for consolidation, times for learning and times for applying what you've learned. Understanding natural rhythms allows you to work with the flow of universal forces instead of against them. Most people exhaust themselves by trying to maintain constant growth or perpetual activity. They don't understand that rest and consolidation are essential parts of any creative process. They try to force results when the timing isn't right, or they hesitate when opportunities are ripe for action. Learning to sense and work with natural rhythms multiplies your effectiveness while reducing unnecessary effort. The sixth principle is cause and effect. Every effect has a cause, and every cause creates an effect. Nothing happens by accident, even when the connections aren't immediately obvious. This principle is liberating because it means you're never powerless. If you can identify the causes that create the effects you want, you can consciously generate those causes and reliably produce desired results. But here's what most people don't realize. Mental and emotional causes are just as real as physical causes. Your beliefs, expectations, and emotional patterns are constantly creating effects in your external experience. When you change these internal causes, the external effects must change as well, though sometimes there's a time delay that makes the connection less obvious. The seventh principle is gender. Everything has both masculine and feminine aspects. The masculine principle is focused, directive, penetrating energy that initiates action. The feminine principle is receptive, creative, nurturing energy that allows growth and manifestation. Both are necessary for any creative process. Most people are overdeveloped in one aspect and underdeveloped in the other. They're either all action with no receptivity, which leads to burnout and forced results, or all receptivity with no focused direction, which leads to dreams that never manifest. Mastery requires developing both aspects and knowing when to apply each one. Now let's talk about the practical applications of these principles, because understanding them intellectually is worthless unless you know how to apply them in real-world situations. The first application is developing what esotericists call the observer self, the part of your consciousness that can witness your thoughts, emotions, and reactions without being completely identified with them. This is the foundation of all other esoteric abilities, because it gives you the space to choose your responses instead of being driven by unconscious patterns. Most people are completely identified with their mental and emotional processes. When they have a thought, they believe it's true. When they feel an emotion, they think it defines who they are. When they react to a situation, they assume their reaction is the only possible response. This complete identification keeps them trapped in repetitive patterns that create the same results over and over again. Developing the observer self is like stepping back from a movie screen. Suddenly you can see that what you thought was reality is actually just images and sounds. You can choose to be engaged with the story or to remain detached. You can appreciate the drama without being consumed by it. You can enjoy the comedy without losing your center. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb or intellectually detached from life. It's about developing the capacity to be fully present with whatever you're experiencing, while maintaining the awareness that you are not your experiences. You are the consciousness that observes and chooses how to respond to experiences. The second application is learning to work with energy consciously. Your energy level isn't just about how much sleep you got or what you ate for breakfast. It's about how coherently you're operating on mental, emotional, and physical levels. When all three levels are aligned and working together harmoniously, you have access to far more energy than when they're scattered or conflicted. Energy management is actually more important than time management, because time is just the framework within which energy operates. You can have all the time in the world, but if your energy is scattered or depleted, you won't accomplish anything meaningful. Conversely, when your energy is focused and abundant, you can accomplish more in an hour than most people do in a week. Everything you do either increases or decreases your available energy. Certain foods, activities, thoughts, emotions, and relationships are energizing, while others are draining. Most people make choices based on immediate gratification or social expectations without considering the energetic consequences. Learning to make decisions based on their effect on your energy levels will transform your effectiveness and your overall quality of life. The third application is developing your intuitive faculties, your ability to access information that isn't available through logical analysis or sensory perception. Everyone has these abilities, but most people have learned to ignore or distrust them because they don't fit into the scientific materialist worldview that dominates modern culture. Intuition isn't mysterious or supernatural. It's your consciousness accessing information from mental and causal planes that your ordinary thinking mind can't reach. It operates through sudden insights, gut feelings, hunches, symbolic dreams, meaningful coincidences, and direct knowing that seems to come from nowhere but is consistently accurate. The key to developing reliable intuitive abilities is learning to distinguish between actual intuitive guidance and mental noise, emotional projections, or wishful thinking. Real intuitive information has certain characteristics. It's usually simple rather than complicated. It comes without emotional charge or attachment to specific outcomes. It often suggests actions that wouldn't occur to your logical mind, and it proves The fourth application is understanding and working with what esotericists call synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reveal the hidden connections between events. Carl Jung studied this phenomenon extensively and concluded that synchronicities are evidence of what he called the collective unconscious, a deeper level of mind that connects all conscious beings. When you're operating from your authentic center and aligned with your true purpose, synchronicities begin happening with increasing frequency. You meet exactly the right person at exactly the right time. Information you need appears just when you need it. Obstacles dissolve in unexpected ways. Resources become available through unlikely channels. This isn't luck. It's what naturally happens when you're in harmony with the deeper patterns that organize reality. Most people experience very few synchronicities because they're living according to social conditioning rather than their authentic nature. They're pursuing goals that don't really match their deeper purposes, hanging around people who drain their energy, and making choices based on fear rather than inspiration. When you begin aligning your life with your true nature and deepest values, the universe seems to conspire to support your efforts. But here's where it gets really practical. You can actually increase the frequency of meaningful synchronicities in your life by developing what esotericists call sacred attention. This means approaching your daily activities with the awareness that everything is potentially meaningful, that every encounter might contain important information, that every experience might be teaching you something valuable. When you start paying attention in this way, you'll be amazed at how much guidance and support is already flowing toward you. The book that falls off the shelf contains exactly the information you need. The conversation you overhear provides the missing piece to a puzzle you've been working on. The delay that seemed like an inconvenience saves you from a problem you didn't know was coming. Let me tell you about the different levels of esoteric development, because understanding where you are in the process helps you focus your efforts more effectively. The first level is awakening, becoming consciously aware that reality is far more mysterious and malleable than you were taught. This usually happens through experiences that can't be explained by conventional thinking. Prophetic dreams, telepathic incidents, healing that defies medical explanation, or encounters with phenomena that challenge materialist assumptions. Most people try to dismiss these experiences or fit them into existing belief systems rather than allowing them to expand their understanding of what's possible. The key to moving beyond the awakening level is accepting that your previous worldview was incomplete and being willing to explore new possibilities without immediately trying to explain them away. The second level is learning, actively studying esoteric principles and experimenting with practices that develop your inner faculties. This is where most people get stuck because they approach esoteric knowledge like academic subjects, collecting information without developing the experiential understanding that makes the information useful. Real esoteric learning requires what ancient traditions called learning with your whole being, not just intellectual study, but practical application, emotional integration, and physical embodiment of principles. You have to test everything through direct experience and keep only what produces reliable results in your actual life circumstances. The third level is developing, consistently practicing specific techniques that enhance your consciousness and expand your abilities. This requires discipline, patience, and the willingness to work on yourself even when you don't feel like it. Most people want the benefits of esoteric development without doing the daily practices that create those benefits. Development happens gradually through accumulated small changes rather than dramatic, overnight transformations. You might not notice day-to-day progress, but after months or years of consistent practice, you'll realize you're operating from an entirely different level of consciousness than when you started. The fourth level is mastery, integrating esoteric principles so thoroughly that they become your natural way of operating. At this level, you're not consciously applying techniques. You're simply being yourself in an expanded way. Your intuition is consistently reliable. Your energy is naturally abundant. Your presence affects others positively, and your life unfolds with a harmony that seems effortless to outside observers. True mastery isn't about developing supernatural powers. It's about becoming so aligned with natural law that you work with universal forces instead of against them. Everything becomes easier because you're no longer fighting reality. You're dancing with it. Now let me give you the specific practices that will accelerate your development, because understanding principles without practical application is just intellectual entertainment. The foundation practice is daily self-observation, spending time each day consciously witnessing your thoughts, emotions, and reactions without trying to change them. This develops the observer self and creates the inner space necessary for conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. Start with just 10 minutes each morning. Sit quietly and simply notice what's happening in your mind and body without getting caught up in the content. Don't try to stop thinking or achieve any particular state. Just practice being aware of your awareness. This simple practice, done consistently, will gradually develop your capacity for conscious living. The second practice is energy awareness, paying attention to how different choices affect your energy levels throughout the day. Notice which foods make you feel vital versus sluggish. Notice which activities energize you versus drain you. Notice which people leave you feeling uplifted versus depleted. Begin making choices that consistently increase your energy rather than decrease it. This isn't about becoming selfish or avoiding all challenging situations. It's about learning to distinguish between experiences that genuinely serve your growth and experiences that simply drain your resources without providing any real benefit. The third practice is intuition development, regularly asking for guidance on practical matters, and then paying attention to the responses you receive. Start with small, low-stakes decisions where you can easily verify the accuracy of your guidance. As you learn to recognize and trust your intuitive faculties, you can begin applying them to more significant choices. The key is to ask specific questions rather than vague ones, and then to notice the first response that comes without analyzing it to depth. Intuitive guidance usually arrives quickly and simply. It's the mental commentary and emotional reactions that create confusion. The fourth practice is synchronicity awareness, paying attention to meaningful coincidences and treating them as guidance about your direction and timing. Keep a record of synchronicities for a few weeks and look for patterns in the messages you're receiving. You'll be surprised at how much guidance is already flowing toward you that you've been unconsciously dismissing as random coincidence. When you start treating synchronicities as a form of communication from deeper levels of intelligence, they begin happening more frequently and with greater relevance to your actual needs. The fifth practice is conscious manifestation, deliberately creating specific results by applying esoteric principles systematically. Choose something you want that's realistic, but beyond what you could achieve through ordinary effort alone. Then apply the principles of mentalism, vibration, correspondence, and the others in a coordinated way to bring your desire into physical reality. This isn't about wishful thinking or magical visualization. It's about understanding how consciousness creates reality and working with those natural processes consciously. Real manifestation requires clarity about what you want, emotional alignment with having it, consistent mental focus, and inspired action in the physical world. But here's what most people get wrong about manifestation. They try to use esoteric principles to get things they don't really need for purposes that aren't aligned with their authentic nature. When you're trying to manifest something that isn't genuinely right for you, you'll encounter resistance, delays, and complications that indicate you're working against natural law rather than with it. The most powerful manifestations happen when you're seeking to create something that serves not just your personal desires, but contributes to the welfare of others as well. This aligns you with what esotericists call the greater good, which gives you access to universal resources that wouldn't be available for purely selfish purposes. Let me address the most common misconceptions about esotericism, because there's a lot of misinformation that prevents people from exploring these principles seriously. The first misconception is that esotericism is anti-scientific or requires you to believe in supernatural nonsense. Actually, authentic esotericism is incredibly scientific. It's based on observable phenomena, repeatable experiments, and measurable results. The difference is that it studies aspects of reality that mainstream science hasn't developed instruments to measure yet. Everything that's now accepted scientific fact was once considered impossible or supernatural. Electricity, radio waves, quantum mechanics, and DNA were all dismissed by established experts before being proven real. Esoteric principles are simply the leading edge of scientific understanding. They're describing aspects of reality that will eventually be validated by conventional research. The second misconception is that you have to join some secret organization or follow a particular guru to access esoteric knowledge. While teachers and groups can be helpful, the most important esoteric knowledge is actually built into your own consciousness. You already have all the equipment you need. You just need to learn how to use it consciously. The real secrets aren't hidden because someone is trying to keep them from you. They're hidden because they can only be discovered through direct personal experience. No one can give you intuitive abilities or energetic sensitivity. They have to be developed through your own practice and experimentation. The third misconception is that esotericism is about escaping from the world or avoiding practical responsibilities. Actually, authentic esoteric development makes you more effective in the world, not less. When you understand how consciousness creates reality, you become better at solving problems, building relationships, creating abundance, and contributing meaningfully to whatever field you're involved. The goal isn't to transcend ordinary life. It's to bring higher consciousness into ordinary life so that everything you do becomes more harmonious, effective, and fulfilling. The fourth misconception is that esoteric abilities make you superior to other people or exempt from natural consequences. Real esoteric development actually makes you more humble, not less, because you realize how much you don't know and how interconnected you are with everyone else. Hence, practitioners often seem remarkably ordinary on the surface. They're just operating from a deeper level of wisdom and compassion. Having unusual abilities doesn't make you special. Everyone has access to the same potentials. It just means you've learned to develop capacities that most people leave dormant. It's like being able to play piano. It's a learnable skill, not evidence of superiority. Now let me give you the roadmap for actually applying everything I've shared, because information without implementation is useless. Start with self-observation and energy awareness. These are the foundations that make everything else possible. Spend at least 2 weeks developing these practices before adding anything else. Don't try to rush the process or skip steps. Each level of development prepares you for the next one. Once you're comfortable with basic self-observation, begin experimenting with intuition development and synchronicity awareness. These will give you direct evidence that there's more to reality than physical appearances suggest. Keep a journal of your experiments and results so you can track your progress objectively. After a month or 2 of consistent practice, you can begin working with conscious manifestation. Start small. Choose something you want. That would be nice to have, but isn't desperately needed. This allows you to experiment without attachment to outcomes, which is essential for learning how the process actually works. As your abilities develop, you can tackle larger projects and more complex applications. But remember that development happens gradually. Don't expect dramatic results immediately. You're rewiring your consciousness to operate at expanded levels, which takes time and consistent effort. The most important thing is to approach this as a practical science rather than a belief system. Test everything through direct experience. Keep what works and discard what doesn't. Trust your own results more than anyone else's theories or testimonials. And remember that the goal isn't to become someone different. It's to become more genuinely yourself. All of these abilities and principles are already present within your consciousness. You're not adding something foreign. You're uncovering and developing what was always there. This is the complete truth about esotericism. No mystical fluff, no impossible promises, no cultish nonsense, just the practical science of consciousness and how to use it to create a life that's aligned with your deepest values and highest potentials. The knowledge is now yours. The practices are clearly outlined. The roadmap is complete. The only question remaining is whether you'll actually apply what you've learned or file it away as interesting information that you never get around to using. Your consciousness is the most sophisticated instrument in the known universe. Learning to use it consciously is the most practical skill you could possibly develop. Everything else you want to accomplish, better relationships, financial abundance, creative fulfillment, physical health, spiritual growth, all of it becomes easier when you understand how consciousness creates reality. The choice is yours, but choose quickly, because every day you delay is another day of operating below your actual potential. The world needs people who understand these principles and can apply them wisely. Your unique combination of talents, experiences, and perspectives is needed now more than ever. This is your invitation to stop living as a victim of circumstances and start living as a conscious creator of your own experience. The tools are in your hands. The knowledge is in your mind. The power is in your consciousness. What are you going to do with it?